From the Toronto Star, I'm Raju Mudhar, and this matters. While there are many who like to tell athletes to stick to sports, the truth is, sports has been a key part of social change for a long time. Just as athletes are getting bigger, faster, and stronger than previous generations, so are their platforms now. That has never been more evident than the past few weeks, since the killing of George Floyd by police officers. Athletes have been speaking out, protesting, and using their power, and the results have been incredible.
We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. We, the National Football League, believe Black Lives Matter.
That was Roger Goodell, commissioner of the NFL, in a video that he sent online last week. This is the same NFL that a few years ago created a national scandal out of Colin Kaepernick's kneeling protest on this very issue, and effectively blackballed him out of the league because of it. It seems that there is a rush by many to get on what they see as the right side of history. Or is this business as usual, and that they see this as good for their bottom line to go with the prevailing social trends? To discuss this, we are joined by Morgan Campbell, who is a freelance sports writer whose work has appeared in the New York Times. He is also a former sports reporter for The Star, where he won a National Newspaper Award and long wrote about the intersection of sports, race, and business in his former Sports Prism column. Thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime, Reggie.
I know you have a great sense of history about this sort of stuff, and I really, really want for you to put it into context for us. How would you characterize sort of the about face on protests in the sports world in the past week or so?
How would I characterize it? Well, a lot of it is that other businesses, other brands, so if you take the sports out of it, just think of these companies as brands. Other brands have jumped on this because they figured out it's good business. Like, we're not in the Republicans buy sneakers too era anymore, which is what Nike learned a year and a half, 2 years ago, whenever it was, when they signed Colin Kaepernick, free agent Colin Kaepernick, to that contract, and all these conservative anti-Kaepernick guys started burning their Nikes and throwing them in the trash and doing whatever to them. But Nike recognized that you can lose those customers and gain a lot more, because younger consumers actually like it when a brand stands for something, especially something as fundamental as human rights, right? We're not talking about anything really controversial when you're saying that Black Americans deserve to be treated as human beings. Like, that should not be a controversial statement. And so to come out and say that really isn't that controversial, except that one side of the U.S. political spectrum always made those statements seem controversial. So the NFL they got to sit back and see what Nike did, got to see what Reebok did, what all these running brands did, Hoka One, Ben & Jerry's, all these other brands. And they kind of took the temperature, not just of the protests, but of consumer reaction to the protests and to these different brands supporting the protests. And then they dipped a toe in, and then they waded in.
I'm super curious about what you thought when you heard Roger Goodell say Black Lives Matter. Drew Brees is also really interesting. If he said his piece about never understanding someone disrespecting the flag a month ago, he'd be fine.
I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country.
Now he's shouted down by his teammates.
I just want you to see in my eyes how sorry I am for the comments that I made yesterday. I know that it hurt many people.
And the next thing you know, he's chirping at the president on Twitter about structural racism. What do you think about all that?
We'll take Drew Brees first. If you've played a lot of football, I have. Little known fact, but a well-known fact. I sat on the bench as a wide receiver in university at Northwestern. I played with guys that went to the NFL. We actually lost to Peyton Manning's team. They beat us up pretty good, lost to Keyshawn Johnson's team. So I say that to say this. I've seen great quarterbacks in action. I've seen great receivers in action, even if I wasn't one of them. And one of the things a really good quarterback does, like, they throw their receiver open. That's what they call it. Throw him open. So a guy that's not open, a guy that's covered, you don't throw it to where he is. You throw it to where he needs to be, and the guy gets there. And so in this sense, Drew Brees was the receiver that covered, and his Black teammates and LeBron James of the world threw Drew Brees open in that they got him to where he needed to be. So on one day he says, kneeling for the anthem disrespects my grandfathers who fought in World War II, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of Black players have fathers, grandfathers who fought in world wars, Vietnam, what have you, and still came back to the United States and were treated as less than full citizens. So Drew Brees' grandfathers are not necessarily more patriotic than my grandfather, someone else's grandfather. And sometimes, especially like with white conservative Americans, they play that card, the military service card, and it's supposed to trump every discussion about race and patriotism, again, as if white patriotism is more patriotic than black patriotism. But in this case, what Drew Brees conveniently forgot was that this whole idea of taking a knee was something that Colin Kaepernick came up with in consultation with Nate Boyer, who was a teammate, but also a military member. And they decided that taking a knee during the anthem was more respectful than just sitting the anthem out. So Drew Brees says what he says, yes. And like 6 months ago, the main chorus of voices would have been a chorus of voices supporting him. But the killing of George Floyd changed so much, not just in people's attitudes, but also just in people's willingness to express those attitudes. And so you had people who didn't feel shy about throwing Drew Brees open, right? Getting him to where he needed to be. Where he needed to be was on the side of what's right. Because again, there are people that will find the other side to this debate. But if you're not on the side that says kneeling on a man's neck for 9 minutes until he dies is wrong, then there's not much anyone can do to defend you.
Kneeling was anathema in sports, and the NFL made it so. Now it is the hot thing to do everywhere. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did it. We're seeing police officers do it. As every sport tries to reopen, it's going to be everywhere. What do you think about that? And do you worry at all about it being co-opted?
It already has been co-opted, but that's fine. Like when it gets to the point where cops are doing it, I don't know if Mitt Romney's doing it, but he might as well have Justin Trudeau's doing it. It's been co-opted, but at least all the people that have co-opted it are still doing it at the very least to appear like they're heading in the right direction on this issue, right? You think about another gesture that a black NFL quarterback took mainstream, right? It was the dab. Remember Cam Newton, and he would score these touchdowns in his big season, 2015, and he would dab, right? And all of a sudden, everybody's dabbing. Hillary Clinton's dabbing. Everyone's dabbing. I don't know if John Tory dabbed, but you might as well have. But after Trump gets elected and all these Republicans work to try to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, here's Paul Ryan. And if we're going to stick to sports, Paul Ryan he was the Speaker of the House, also was a teller of tall tales about his marathon times. He claimed to have run a sub 3-hour marathon, and the only marathon result you could find for Paul Ryan was, north of 4 hours. So we're still sticking to sports. So Paul Ryan, to celebrate some legislation that the Republican-dominated Congress had signed to try to roll back the Affordable Care Act, how does he celebrate? He dabs. And so as long as whoever is like the current Paul Ryan is not taking a knee and not taking a knee like to celebrate gutting somebody's rights, I can at least live with it. Like at least everyone who's kneeling is still saying that they're on the side, says killing unarmed black people is wrong.
You've talked to Akim Aliu about the ugly incidents in hockey.
When I did bring up the hazing thing, look what happened. I was made out to be the villain. I ended up getting traded. Till this day, I'm not really sure what I did wrong besides stand up for myself and bring light to the fact of what was going on. I got shunned from the under-17 Team Canada. I didn't play under-18 Team Canada. I never had a chance with the World Juniors. I never played in any Canada-Russia series, anything like that. Why is he not getting looks? Well, he's a bad kid. But when you're asking questions, well, why is he a bad kid? There's never really an explanation. Well, I feel like my reputation really took a hit at that time, and I was never really able to recover.
He and a number of other black players have just started the Hockey Diversity Alliance. I'm just wondering why they would need to do that, since the last I checked, there was no racism in Canada.
Well, it's because so many of the teams are in the United States, so you have to combat racism down there. Yes, because there is no racism in Canada. I think that's part of the oath of citizenship that we all have to say when we come here. Akim Aliu is like a really interesting lens. Everything that's happening now, when you think about, like, one of the last stories I wrote as a full-time employee at the Star was this, profile of Akim Aliu and everything he had gone through. And we looked at the state of race and racism in the NHL. And fast forward 6 months, you have NHL teams jumping in on Black Lives Matter. And the other interesting point, as far as that is concerned, is remember he had that story in the Players Tribune a few months ago where he went into more detail, because Akim has been very active in the mainstream media, between the end of November and Valentine's Day. Every time you is related every single incident of outright racism that he's experienced in his career, he has more. Right? So then he goes to the Players Tribune, he writes this story. And one of the reactions to the story, and one of the things he points out in the story, is the utter silence of white NHL players on racism. Because these incidents, they affect black players, yes, but they affect teams. And if you're a good teammate, you don't want this to happen to your teammate. And for the most part, like, white NHL players had been silent. And then from there, you had Evander Kane doing these interviews. Again, really highlighting and calling out the silence of high-profile white NHL players when racism is right there in the league, and not just in this league, but in all the leagues they played in growing up. And that kind of set the stage. Like, it put that idea of white allyship amongst high-profile white pro athletes on the radar in ways that would become really apparent, 2 weeks later after the killing of George Floyd. Now you have even Tom Brady saying justice for Floyd, I think is what he tweeted or posted on Instagram. And then you have Drew Brees trying to die on kneeling his unpatriotic hill. Before he gets to the top of the hill, looks around at the people he's going to die alongside on top of kneeling his unpatriotic hill, and does a smart thing and retreats. But like, Akim Aliu's story and Evander Kane's subsequent interviews kind of prime the pump for this idea that white stars in these leagues not only can, but should speak up on behalf of their teammates and the communities they represent.
Sort of stuck on this point, but I'm amazed that we've really gone from this whole stick to sports thing to even the seemingly most apolitical athlete now speaking out and leading protests worldwide. You've mentioned a couple already. Is there anything else or anybody in particular that stood out to you in this really crazy time?
Yeah, this idea that every athlete can and should speak out. I've always been of the opinion that the people who are equipped to do it should do it, can and should. Absolutely. But if you haven't been paying attention to the issue and you don't know the issue very well, then your opinion on the issue really doesn't count any more than like a lot of high profile people in the media industry. I don't listen to them on these issues. Like, who besides Rex Murphy asked about Rex Murphy's opinion on systemic racism in Canada? Who besides Stockwell Day asked for Stockwell Day's opinion on systemic racism in Canada? So if there ever was a situation where those two guys should be told to stick to whatever it is they do most of the time, that's what they should have done, right? I guess everyone is entitled to an opinion, yes, but like, is everyone entitled to a platform for an uninformed opinion? Not really. So if you're not informed on the topic, you might be better off sticking to sports. But if you're like an Eton Thomas, former NBA player, who has been knee deep in all of this stuff forever, go ahead and do it. You know what else stood out to me was Blackout Tuesday. Again, when all the brands and all the teams are posting the black square to show their solidarity for African Americans struggling under the weight of centuries of systemic racism. Cool. So then here come the San Francisco 49ers posting the black square talking about Blackout Tuesday, when this is the same team that cut Colin Kaepernick and made him a free agent and helped create the situation that we're in right now, where Colin Kaepernick is still more than qualified to play quarterback in the NFL, but no team wants to give him a good faith tryout, which decided that they were going to speak out against racism by posting a black square on their social feeds, was the NFL team from Washington, whose franchise name still is an anti-Indigenous slur. I tweeted, I guess what the message they want to send was, we're strongly opposed to most forms of racism. So again, when all these brands jump on this moment, I'm still not sure every brand is equally sincere, or if they're doing this because it's good business, or if they're doing it for even a more cynical reason than that. Because what I don't think any brand and most public figures want, and I've said this before, nobody wants to be the Boston Red Sox with Jackie Robinson, right? Where they gave Jackie Robinson a tryout in 1945 and said, yeah, this guy's not good enough to play Major League Baseball. And then the following season, he goes to the International League and bats .350. The next season, he comes to the Dodgers and wins Rookie of the Year. Yet somehow you guys said, nobody wants to be the butt of that joke on the other side of this. And I think that's where the tide is shifting, because like so many of these rich people that run these brands, and these 32 NFL team owners, for the most part, they're Trump supporters. Many of them are serious Trump donors, because we know the winners write history, right? So people keep saying to me, well, history's not going to remember Donald Trump kindly. And I'm like, you don't know that, because Trump wins another election and they stack the Supreme Court with even more relatively young wing judges. Like Trump's outright racist, xenophobic immigration policies are able to grow roots You could say that he's won. And then 50 years from now, history will remember him kindly because he's won. He loses, the victors write history. And I think a lot of people are sensing that the tide is turning on Trumpism. And there's a very good chance Trump loses the next election. Whether he leaves the White House peacefully is a different issue. But if this is the beginning of the end of Trumpism, nobody wants to be on that side. Nobody wants to be the Boston Red Sox. Nobody wants to be the guy that said Muhammad Ali would never amount to much as a pro fighter. So everyone's scrambling now to get on the right side of this issue. Nobody wants to be the people that hated Ali while he was protesting, love Ali now that he's dead. So I don't know how genuine all of it is. Some of it, I'm sure, is genuine.
There's a cliche that I like. Change comes slowly and then all at once. Is this one of those moments? And the real questions are, does this last? And how do we make it?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. So much of what looks like support, again, is corporations reading the social media trends. And writing a check is easy. Posting something on Instagram or Twitter is easy. I say this all the time from a media standpoint. Like, me and every Black journalist I know, in this city especially, our phone's been ringing constantly for 2 weeks, right? Because there's a racial crisis, especially a racial crisis that doesn't happen in Canada. Canadians can look at Americans and say, oh my, pity about your race problem. Lucky we don't have this here in the land of multiculturalism. But everybody has all of our phone numbers right now because of the moment. A year from now, will your newsrooms look any different? Will your corporate boards look any different? Will the list of decision makers in your organization look any different? When it's really time to shatter the glass ceiling, will you have all of our phone numbers then? And I cannot say with certainty that we will get those calls a year from now. Right now, we're getting calls for a bunch of one-offs. But when it comes to like really changing the face of your organization and bringing it into the 21st century, I will believe that when I see it.
Morgan, this is great for us. And I want to say that I will call you because we want to hear what you think about these important topics. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, anytime, Raju.
Morgan Campbell is a freelance sports reporter who covers sports, race, and business. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining us. This Matters is hosted and produced by me, Raju Mudhar, Adrian Chung, and Saba Etisaz. Produced and mixed by Sean Pattenden, and our director of programming is JP Foso. Our show theme music is by So Called, and our episode music is by Mike DeAngelis. We want to hear what stories matter to you. Please send us comments, questions, or ideas to thismatters@thestar.ca. Please consider supporting the journalism the Toronto Star newsroom does at thestar.com. And don't forget to subscribe to This Matters on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Let's talk soon.